Good morning, everyone. בוקר טוב לכולם. אנחנו נפתח את היום הארוך הזה בנושא
begin this long day in a subject that's very much in the headline, and the first speaker is going to be the director of the Institute, General in Reserves, Amos Yadlin. He's going to greet us and also is going to give his lecture about the situation in the area. I would like to ask Amos to come up and address us. Good morning. Oded, thank you for organizing this day. Thanks to Professor Schieser and Professor Border from the Columbia University. They are our co-partners on this day. 2 years ago, I met in a synagogue in Georgetown the Senator Lieberman. He was a senator at the time. It was on Yom Kippur. It's the only day that I go to synagogue. And Senator Lieberman and I were discussing what's happening in the world between the prayers. And then he said to me, look, Amos, the fact that Israel and the United States found gas and oil, that's the proof that there is a God and that he's listening to our prayers. And in fact, since then, there are dramatic changes that are happening, and we see that energy is not only in the earth of the bad guys, but also in that of the good guys. And Oded and his partners worked rather hard so that this conference will be exactly at the time where the prices of energy and oil are going down dramatically. Oded, very good timing, actually, and I'm very proud of you. And this day that was interesting anyway has become even more interesting because we see what is happening around the world. In the Israeli media, when you read the reporting, it seems that we are in a rise of prices. We always like to see the bad side of every phenomenon. Maybe it sells newspapers when it's bad news, but when there is good news, then nobody looks at the good side of it. We're also older enough in order to understand that any good phenomenon brings about also some sort of a dual problem, which is a challenge that we have to face. But I belong to those who think that the oil market is going to be that one of a supply rather than a demand, because going over to natural gas and shale oil in the United States, the Saudi production that went up to the maximum, the slowdown in the demand for oil in the East, all that is going to create a market of suppliers rather than people who demand. And I think that this is a gift of $2 trillion in the global economy, according to the Federal Reserve. This is a gift to anybody who was dependent on oil in a very, very difficult way, and it's much less money in the hands of the bad guys headed by Iran. I don't know what Russia looks to you, but we cannot understand the international relations that this institute is dealing with without understanding the aspect of economy and energy and what it does to the conduct of those countries. And that's why this day is really a very, very important one. Yes, we do have to see what it's going to do to the oil industry in the United States, and the shale oil, maybe due to technology and invention and streamlining, it will be able to survive prices of $70 per barrel. We have to see how Putin is going to conduct himself when he comes to the critical point, and maybe the only way to cope with the rise of prices is to create tension in the world, to increase the prices. We cannot look at it in one dimension way. There are positive phenomena and negative ones, and this day will try to deal with both. I was asked by Oded to open this day, not regarding energy, because that's not my expertise, but just to give some sort of a general overview about the Middle East, about the tough neighborhood in which we are living. And let me mention 7 points that, in my mind, we have to look at 2015, which I hope will be a good year. Some of them have to do with energy, but also with other energies, national, religious, military energies that are in this region. So the first subject was and remains, as far as the national security of Israel, the Iran nuclear. The nuclear in Iran in the last year sort of was moved aside in favor of the negotiations between the P5 and the members of the Security Council in Germany vis-à-vis the Iranians. Very severe sanctions brought Iran to the negotiating table, not in order to buy time, but in a trend really to alleviate the sanctions. Minimum, you know, the Iranians are very good negotiators. However, the Iranians really want to reach an agreement that will take away the sanctions, and the Americans that are leading the group also want to reach an agreement. But what we saw in last November was that they cannot reach the same kind of agreement. The Iranians want to be very close to the bomb, and that the sanctions are going to be removed immediately, a short-term agreement, but the Americans cannot accept that. They want to deter, and they want to move the Iranians a little bit back, not enough years in our mind, but at least they are blocking them from getting to the nuclear, either it's Iranian or the arms or whatever. The Iranians could not ensure some parameters in the agreement that will give the Americans enough confidence that they're not going to jump to the bomb the moment the situation enables that. The chance that this agreement will be prolonged again exists, but it's not definite, because both sides are going to probably reach all agreements that are possible. And if the supreme ruler of Iran, he's the one actually that determines, it's not going to give more maneuvering scope, and the foreign minister Zarif and the president Rouhani, then we definitely can see in July, when the interim agreement is over, a great rise in the tension. And just you can think about what it does to the prices of oil. So that's the first point. Second point is the fact that the Middle East is going to continue in 2015 to see one of the very significant conflicts out of many, but that's the Sunni and Shiite conflict, which continues in great force. It's not direct. It's not a war between Iran and Saudi Arabia that are the two leaders of the Sunni and Shiites, but it's a proxy kind of war wherever possible, whether it be in Iraq or Syria or Yemen. And this conflict did not end. The Iranians, on the one hand, feel that they had a lot of achievements. Today, actually, they dictate what's happening in 4 capitals in the Middle East: Baghdad, Syria, Beirut, and Sana'a. He means Damascus. This is a very great achievement that they couldn't achieve many years when they wanted to export the revolution, but in no place they came to a full victory, and this conflict is going to continue against the extremist ISIS and also the moderate Sunnis. I want to refer you to the very significant rise in the budget of the Iranian conventional army. Now that the nuclear program is stopped, or at least is frozen, the conventional Iranian military, the external forces who help them stop ISIS, Iranians who help Assad to cope with his opposition in Syria, Iranians who help the Yemenites. The Iranian conventional army gets additional budget at a time when the Iranian economy is in a problem, where they're missing a lot of millions of dollars that don't come. Because of the sanctions and the reduction in the prices of oil, they really make it difficult for the Iranians. And nevertheless, the Iranians continue to pressure. And we'll see Iraq, as well as Syria and Yemen continuing, and also Libya. There, the Iranians are not the major players, but these are 4 countries in the Middle East that actually have dismantled or dismantling. And the chance that they're going to go to be back stable countries in the borders of Sykes-Picot are not so high in 2015. What about Syria? In Syria, there's a tie between the regime and the opposition. And in Syria, we really see a strengthening of ISIS or ISIL. I see that all parties understand today that the solution in Syria is apparently not military. Assad understands it. He cannot prevail over the opposition. They understand the same. ISIS understand that they cannot run over to Baghdad and Damascus and degrade and defeat. So maybe the degrade is going to happen, but the defeat won't. And therefore, we're talking here about some sort of a balance that leads us to look for a political solution. Assad also says that he has a willingness for a political solution. Also, his patrons, the Russians, the Iranians, are beginning to withdraw from the very rigid positions of supporting Assad to accepting some sort of an idea of Assad moving gradually. And perhaps Geneva 1 and 2 have failed, but Geneva 3 may be some sort of a success in Syria. ISIS are not going to be there as a major player, but we have great forces here that maybe after 4 years of a civil war can lead to another direction. If we talk about ISIS, no question that this is the real change in 2014. It caused Obama president to do 3 U-turns from very clear positions that he had. One, that he ends the wars in the Middle East and brings back the forces home. And now we see the United States actually beginning a new war in the Middle East. Second, President Obama said that the war on terror of his predecessor is not the American strategy, and he used much softer terms. And he actually goes back now to war on terror. And the third thing is the boots on the ground. Here as well, the president has to think whether he can defeat ISIS without the boots on the ground. And the challenge in the war against ISIS, this amazing coalition of 32 countries, to see who is going to take the role of boots on the ground. And I think Obama himself, personally, and also the American people will not agree to send the soldiers. So will it be the Turkish regime or the Egyptians or the Jordanians? That's the interesting question for 2015. The Turks are asking as a condition for their joining to put Assad in the front line, not just ISIS, whether with the regions that you cannot fly over or some corridors, and this is the main point we have to look at, because without the Turks joining the battle against ISIS, the chances of defeating them is rather low. What about Egypt? Egypt is now stable under Sisi, but it didn't solve its own problems. And here the question we should ask whether the reduction of the prices of oil will cause the fat check of more than $10 billion that the Egyptians are getting from the Bay countries, from the Gulf countries. Is it going to disappear? And if it does, then the stability of the regime in Egypt is going to be problematic. Egypt needs to go back to grow and to flourish 7% a year in order to supply work to anybody who leaves its schools and universities. Egypt has to deal with the subsidies that distort the structure of the economy. It has to give back investments. These are very extraordinary and difficult challenges, and President Sisi, who came to be president because of a coalition between the military and the street, he left the Muslim Brothers. They did not deliver the goods. He will have to prove that he knows how to deliver the goods. And I think that 2015 is a very decisive year for him. Is he going to be able to deliver the goods, or he's going to follow his predecessors and the street will decide to cope with a regime that doesn't? The sixth point we should look at is, of course, our conflict here, Israeli-Palestinian conflict. At the moment, it is led by the Palestinians to a political intifada rather than a violent one. The decision of the Palestinians is a strategic one, that a violent intifada does not serve their interests, and therefore there will not be a decision to take terror as a strategy of the leaders. But it can happen, from grassroots without anybody intending to do that. It happened in the past. Some sort of a strategic somebody can do something that will deteriorate us both sides to war. I don't think it's the situation, but it can happen, and we have to be vigilant. The first half of 2015, we're going to deal mainly with the resolutions of the Security Council, attempts to go to international organizations, and a very heavy pressure on the part of the Palestinians towards the state of Israel. And we have to also pay attention to Gaza. The last war did not solve any problem. The Hamas didn't get anything. As far as they see it, the blockade is still on. The Egyptians are very active in order to detach Gaza from the Sinai Peninsula, and that's the source of smuggling, both economic and military. And we don't have to be surprised if Gaza, little by little, is going to come to a boiling point. And finally, I want to go back to the subject at hand. The reduction of the oil prices has an impact on the Middle East. The Middle East is a source quite significant to the income of oil. We have to go state by state and to see what happens to it. So surprisingly enough, Iran anyway is under sanctions that do not enable it to realize its income from oil. Most of its income is stuck in banks outside of Iran, but still, it may be that that's what's going to make the difference. And anybody who's an economist here and you learn the economy of Iran, you have to see if the reduction of the prices of oil actually causes a change in the position of Iran. As I said, it was very rigid under the directives of the supreme leader. Saudi Arabia is not supposed to be jeopardized because 10 million barrels, $140 per barrel, is like 14 million in a lower price. But still, prices went down a bit more than what they planned, the Saudis, and we have to see that the stability of the kingdom, some of it is bought because of the fact that billions of dollars are given to the population in order to keep it calm, whether through free education, free housing, and 13 salaries a year. We have to see if it's not going to create a change in the stability of Saudi Arabia. And if you add to that also the legacy and the inheritance that can be relevant in 2015, 15, I'm sorry, will be. I think ISIS is also going to be jeopardized by the reduction of the prices. You know, smuggling of oil, it's not dramatic in the world market, but for them it is. And I go back to us again. I think that the state of Israel and the bottom line benefits from the reduction of oil prices. It also absorbs the fact that the gas that it found is worth less today, but that's exactly the topic at hand today, and I wish all of us study day that we will come out smarter, more intelligent than when we came into it. Thank you.